We're about to go live here.
Oh, geez.
Told you, it's official.
Yeah.
Serious.
Okay, and we are now live on the live stream as well. Thank you all for being here. This is our, I think, the fourth quarantine happy hour chat we've put together here. And today I'm joined by Caleb Curtis, Andy Bianco, Brian Krock, Paul Jones. And we're really glad that you guys could take a few minutes to talk about, where you're at, what's happening, and some places that people can check out your music and support what you guys are up to. So before we go too far, I'd love to go around here and everybody to introduce themselves and tell people what they play and what their projects are, if they're working on anything, and maybe where they are quarantined right now. So let's start with Caleb.
Okay. My name's Caleb Curtis. I play saxophone, and I'm here at home in Brooklyn, New York. And you're going to hear that a couple of times. And I'm the most active project at the moment that I have is the Curtis Garabedian Speraza Trio. We have a record out on Outside In called New Year that came out last year, and we're working on another project. And then I have a record out under my own name called Brothers with some guys associated with Orrin Evans and the Captain Black Big Band. And another one of those coming out in the fall. And then otherwise, it's hard to think of really anything at all other than this present moment. But yeah, I don't know. What should I say, Brian? What should I tell them?
I think you covered it, man. I think you covered it.
Great, thank you.
Well, now that Brian's talking, Brian, why don't you?
Sure. Okay. Hey, I'm Brian Krock. I am the leader of this big band called Big Heart Machine. We have a record out on Outside In Music that came out in 2018. And I also lead a smaller group that's called Liddle, Liddle. And we had a record come out last year. We've got a live album coming out this fall that we recorded at Firehouse 12. And Big Heart Machine also has a live album coming out this year. That's done. I'm still trying to plan out now what to do with it. But there's a video to accompany each song on that record. And that all was done by Marantz Audio Visual. Matt Marantz recorded it and Luke Marantz is editing the videos. And yeah, I'm quarantined here in Brooklyn, New York. And today's actually the first day of this quarantine period that I've been off the couch because I've been really sick. I didn't get tested for COVID, but I had sinusitis. I don't know if it's related to COVID or whatever, but I had a really bad sinus infection. So I've been absolutely like the sickest I've ever been in my life. And it's been really a sad scene here in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn.
Feeling better now?
I am. I went for a run today. I only ran half a mile, but it was my first. So, yeah.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad you're feeling better. And isn't that other little record is coming soon, right?
Yeah, that's coming out on another label. It's coming out on Out of Your Head Records.
Cool.
So yeah, so we're that's all done and ready to come out. We're doing digital only. But we are making some physical little goodies. We're making like postcards with download codes.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Right. And Andy?
Oh, hello, everybody. Nick, thank you for doing this. It's great to meet you all. My name is Andy Bianco. I'm a professional performing guitarist and composer based out of Brooklyn, New York. Here I am in Windsor Terrace. And currently, I work with several different projects and different artists, but right now my main focus is promoting my newest release on Next Level Records entitled NYC Stories, which is right here. And unfortunately, both of my CD release parties are canceled indefinitely. Hopefully it'll be postponed or they'll be rescheduled. But so I don't have any shows right now. I'm hoping to reschedule the ones that I that got canceled. But yeah, I'm just promoting that, and that's my main focus. I don't try not to lose momentum, even though we are in a pandemic. So happy to be here, happy to be a part of the label, and yeah.
Great. And Paul?
Hey world, I'm Paul Jones. I'm coming to you from Inwood, New York, which is Upper Manhattan, sitting on my girlfriend's couch. I have a new project out this year as well on Outside In. It's called Let's Get Tropical. It has pianist Phil Markowitz, bass player Linda O, and drummer Clarence Penn. I was so happy and enthralled I could get them to play on my record. It was a dream to make that happen, and so I'm really super happy to have that out and share it with the world. And yeah, I'm just hanging out in the pandemic and like spent the last 10 days just mostly like trying to figure out if I was going to get sick or not, getting meds and stocking up in food and cooking new recipes and things like that. And happy to say I'm surviving, which is good. And I'm glad to hear, Brian, you're feeling better.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, and I've been hearing that this thing is pretty intense. A couple of saxophone players, friends of mine, Nick Biello and Sam Dillon, supposedly have had it, and Nick is getting over it, which I'm really happy to hear. And I think Sam's in the middle of it right now. I hope Sam doesn't get mad if like I'm telling the world his business. But I'm sure everybody will be like, send love to Sam for his quick recovery. Yeah, and I'm happy to be hanging with Outside In and Nick and everything he does for all the musicians on his label and putting out good music.
Our best. Awesome. Well, I think what I want to do now is go around one more time, and everyone can think about this for a second, but I've been asking everybody this question: who, alive or dead, is the jazz musician you would most like to be quarantined with? Sorry, not jazz musician, but musician. Could be any musician.
Quarantined with?
You got to be quarantined with, like stuck in your current
Oh,
situation.
God.
Wait, could we do who is the jazz musician, alive or dead, you'd least like to be quarantined
Sure. Yeah,
with?
we've had this conversation too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dangerous.
Some that have come up as that people don't want to hang out with would be Miles, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be quarantined with Miles.
But I mean, what if you really like drugs?
It's,
I mean-
oh,
Guess we gotta keep it. I don't like
so
drugs. I don't
You
do-
said alive or dead?
yeah, it could be dead or alive.
I think
Could be anything.
Caleb will get in trouble if he doesn't
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
Marta Sanchez.
Yeah, that's. I think so. Well, the added benefit is that we are, and it's cool. So
And it's going great.
it's going great. I don't really, man, it's hard to imagine spending that much time with anybody
Right.
all in a row, much less someone you don't know.
It's true. That's
We're all
why
about
it's
to
why
find
it's
out
the
what it's
question.
like to spend that much time with somebody.
Right. So what do you think, Caleb? Would it be Marta or would it also be somebody else?
It would be Martha for sure, because I wish it was easier for us to play together in our apartment. We don't feel that comfortable with that. So, but it would be really nice to be able to play music with somebody else. At the moment.
Andy, what do you think? Who's your quarantine buddy?
well, I mean, it's a challenging question because on one hand, I mean, there's some people that I would like to hang with, but I think they may be too much of a hang for me. So I don't, as much as I'd love to have met Miles Davis. I think that would be too much of a hang. I'd say either Prince or Coltrane. I feel like right now for me, the quarantine vibe is a really good chance to reflect and maybe be a little bit more sort of peaceful and more spiritual and be very exploratory and contemplative. And I think someone like Train would be from what I've read about him, would be a very good, peaceful person, a good roommate, not someone that would be too crazy or blowing lines off strippers' backs like Miles Davis. You know what I mean? So I think I would say if I had to pick one, although I'd love to hang with Prince, I think he would be cool too. Coltrane. Yeah, Coltrane.
Be shedding the whole time. He would never talk to
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He'd probably be annoying. He'd just
It would
be
make
like
it
doing
would make
this.
me practice more though. It would inspire me to practice more, which is good.
Could be. Or what about you, Brian? What do you think?
Well, okay, a couple come to mind. I want to say Carla Bley because I'm also like going through. I'm reading a book about her by Amy Beale, and trying to listen through her discography. A mutual friend of all of ours, Marty Kenny, he's always doing these projects where he listens chronologically through a single artist's discography, and I've never done that before, so I'm trying to do it with Carla, and she doesn't have any music that I don't like, and she seems really cool. So I would say her. But when you asked a person living who came to mind, and I don't know why, because I don't know this person, but Julian Lage seems like he would be like a very like caring and supportive, gentle person to be quarantined with. So he's also got a really nice voice. So he would deliver like bad news in a pleasant way. Like, so I think I'll give him a runner-up.
Only 3 more weeks of quarantine.
Good answer. Yeah.
And Paul, you have any thoughts?
I think I'd go with Andy. Maybe like if it was like a musical decision, probably Coltrane, because I'm a tenor sax player and he's been my like main entrance into jazz and saxophone life since I was in high school. But if it was just for a hang, there's a picture of Thelonious Monk playing ping pong, and I really enjoy playing ping pong. So I think it'd be fun to hang with him and play ping pong, and I'm sure I could learn so many things, musical or non, just from playing ping pong with him. So
sure.
I like ping pong.
Nice. So while you guys have been, holed up, I know Brian has kind of alluded to what he's been listening to, but I'm curious if you guys have found any new records or new, obsessions, music-wise, while you've been kind of stuck under this quarantine. We got the Carla Bley discography.
Well, yeah, I'll go first, I guess. Carla Bley is somebody who I've always been interested in, but never done a deep dive on. And man, she has like such a varied and interesting and large output. So I've been going through that. But also today, I transcribed a Billy Strayhorn saxophone solo, and I've actually never done that before. Transcribe a saxophone solo. It was really, really tough and super annoying to my fiance because I slowed it down and I was listening to just like the same chord over and over again on Logic, like trying to hear like every voice. So that was driving her nuts. But yeah, so that's on this Rosemary Clooney record called Blue Rose. It was Billy Strayhorn's first big assignment for the Duke Ellington band. So I'd really recommend that record. It's so great. And there's such a fascinating story behind it too, because Rosemary Clooney was pregnant. She was 27 years old. She was very pregnant and having a really rough pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And while Billy Strayhorn was writing the arrangements, he was simultaneously taking care of her, because they were supposed to like meet up to like talk about her range and what key she likes to sing these songs in, and it ended up just being like him like cooking for her and making her tea. But that process of them like getting really close very quickly while he was writing the charts gave her like so much trust in him as an arranger, and I think you can really hear that in the arrangements. So Blue Rose by Rosemary Clooney, great record.
Maybe Billy Strayhorn is a good answer for the quarantine.
Oh man, yeah.
So Brian, somebody was asking on the live stream chat over here. There was a book you said that was about Carla Bley, and they wanted to hear what the name of the book was again.
Sure, it's by Amy C. Beale, Beal. And it's part of a composer series. I don't remember exactly what the book is called, but it's part of a composer series. There's also a similar book about John Cage. There's one about, there's a variety of them. And I heard about it through George Lewis. And so I just started reading it though. I'm like trying to, when a new album comes up in the book, I'm trying to stop reading and listen to it. So it's taking a long time, but.
Oh, okay. Nice. Who else? Who else has got something new they've been listening to or old?
Well, I got. Oh,
Go ahead, Andy. Go ahead.
no, after you, please.
Okay. I just heard it's a brand new record, I think, but just heard for the first time Ted Poor's new record on Impulse
Oh wow.
called "You Already Know" with Andrew D'Angelo mostly.
I'm downloading
And
that now.
It's I have to say it's amazing. I wish that I made that record. And
You don't play drums.
Who else
Do you
on?
know who produced it?
No.
It's Blake Mills produced it.
Oh,
He
yeah.
did all the piano
yeah.
and the strings and stuff. That's
Yeah.
Blake Mills. Such an interesting combination of people.
And it's it's simple. The music is really simple. It's great. It's beautiful, and the sound of the record is great. You know, both the alto and the drums are really up front, which is nice. And then I'm excited to hear Gerald Cleaver's brand new electronic record.
Oh,
That
That's
came out today or yesterday. So I just started checking that out, and yeah, and then I think right before I guess it was the beginning of the month, so a couple weeks before, John Arabigon recommended to me this guy Maurice McIntyre on the record called "Humility in the Light of the Creator," and he's I guess a Chicago ASCM guy that I don't know about. And I guess those have been the ones that that's where my head's at.
Andy?
No, that's cool. That's good to know. Yeah, I mean, I haven't checked out Ted Poor's new record. I want to check it out after this. Blake Mills, I remember seeing him at Rough Trade a couple years back, and I really, really dug it. And I remember at the time he was dating Fiona Apple, and he had her come up and sing, and I was like, I thought that was pretty cool, and it worked out really well. He's definitely a heavy cat. In terms of what I've been listening to today and the past couple of days, actually, there's an Andrew Hill record from 1974 called Invitation that I really like, a trio record. I was actually talking to a good buddy of mine, another great pianist, George Burton, today about that, because I was like, man, I'm digging on this record, and he's like, oh, I love that record. And George is actually on my record, and George actually has a record out that I'm on called Reciprocity, which is another record that I've been checking out. I'm on a couple tracks there, and I'm on 2 Sigur Rós covers. So, but his record is outstanding. It has Tim Warfield and James Biscuit Rouse is on it, Chris Hemingway, a bunch of cats. So I've been checking out those 2 records, and I've been listening to a lot of books on tape, and I've been also listening to a ton of Tom Harrell, but I kind of do that all the time. But definitely I recommend Andrew Hill Invitation, early 70s. It's some of my favorite Andrew Hill, and George Burton Reciprocity.
Paul?
I've not been as widespread. I've really only been listening to like 2 things lately, just because it's what I'm shedding, and I've just been listening to Sonny Rollins' solo on Pent Up House, and then Hank Mobley's solo on Tenor Conclave. Just been listening to those tracks because I'm trying to get jazz language into my life, and it's always been very, very challenging for me. And so I'm trying to just put it through the ringer right now and just let those things get in there. And so those have been really what I've been listening to. And then, like, I can't even think beyond that. Like, that's about it.
That's cool. So I'd love to know more about that, what you were just saying about how you felt like it was hard for you to get jazz vocabulary into your life. What do you mean?
It's
It
still
just
really
seems
hard
like-
for me.
It
I
seems
still
like you play lots of jazz vocabulary to
Oh
me.
man.
I think I just don't play, like, I don't want to talk about myself here, but that
Please
whole
do.
thing. But I think I need to just play more eighth notes, and that might help some. Because I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, man, I know this lick, or like I know that thing, and I was like, I could play that really fast. And I was like, wait a second, maybe I'm just playing it too fast. But I've studied lots of licks and memorized them, or like analyzed solos, written out solos, and things like that. I just always had a really hard time. I think making it sound natural or making it sound like a statement. Even when I listen to my own playing, I'm like, man, sometimes that just sounds like nothing. It's like I can hear all the harmony going by, but I don't hear like a statement of some sort, and I'm trying to figure that out. And like I'm listening to Sonny, and even like listening to Sonny for me is like really hard. It's hard to hear like exactly what he's saying until I like memorize the solo and sit there and understand the notes, what he's exactly doing. So like I want to look at some of the lines that are like really, really strong and really cool and figure out why those are so clear. Because I think, yeah, I've learned language. I've learned like the B da 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 licks, in 12 keys or whatever. And like you learn your bebop heads in 12 keys to try and like get all this stuff together, but it's never really translated into like a solid statement or solid sound. And so I think at the moment what I'm trying to do is memorize Sonny's solo, and then I'm going to write it down, and I want to like analyze the licks that are so strong and clear that make us all go, yeah, that's it, and see why that one little second is really strong. And if I can figure that out, maybe I can like develop that into other words of jazz language,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I asked that because like I see that some of my students are watching, number one, and it's just interesting to hear that same perspective from that you're still, trying to search it out, even though you're maybe doing the thing that they imagine that they want to be doing in the future, just playing in New York. So does any of the rest of you guys have any thoughts about that
I
topic?
do. I want to say before it gets misconstrued that I was laughing at Paul, but not or laughing with Paul because I know that feeling so well. Of feeling like of playing things that don't do anything, nothing happens. And I got so far down that rabbit hole that I thought that notes didn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's like, man, you can just play anything over anything and it doesn't matter. And that was really frustrating to me. It felt like an impenetrable wall because I liked consonants as much as dissonance,
Yeah.
But also maybe that was just to make up for the fact that I couldn't really and struggle to play like lines that sound like anything. So, but one of the places that I've come to from there, because a friend of mine recommended this book called The Harmonic Experience. Do any of you guys know this book?
I only know it because you recommended it to me.
Yeah, because I'm insane about it. But the fundamental premise is to get in touch with the feeling of the relationship of sounds. And the first exercise is to sing in unison with a drone until you feel that you are the drone. So it's like simultaneously musical and philosophical. And it's not a music theory book, it's about the experience of it. But what it ended up making me think about something that I had I had ignored for a long time was the musician that is me before I have the saxophone in my hands. And I've been thinking about it as two musicians. And if I ignore the musician that's here, then when I put the saxophone in my hands, it's disconnected from me. And the saxophone can be very, 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 very highly developed. And when I pick it up, that's the only thing I can do is super high level development on the instrument.
Like your hands and not
your hands. Yeah. I mean, I think the simple way to say it is your hands and not your ear. Right. And one thing that's happened is that my ears have started to open up to the actual like a sound of two notes and what it is, and it makes me really wonder why we play so fast. And I don't know, it's like I can't hear that in fast music. You hear other stuff, other logic and organization, but it's hard to hear the weight of each interval. I mean, it would take real like unbelievable discipline to be able to hear that deeply into it. And I don't know that that's possible for me to do that or if I want to. But I have found a little bit more clarity playing slower in terms of feeling each note and maybe hearing it in a way that I had never experienced up until last year.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that, like with the eighth note thing. Like I can play very fast, from developing technique over time, all the classical eighth note etudes and stuff, and whatever, playing in 12 keys. But Sonny is playing eighth notes, like in medium tempo, just eighth note, and like the connection between first note of the phrase to the second note of the phrase, to all the way through the end. You know, we look at a paper and we study these things. Like it's so easy to be like, oh yeah, he's doing approach to the 1, then he's doing the 3rd, the 5th, the major 7 to the 9, back down. You know, really easy to look at that, but he actually heard it and felt it and understood it, and so it's like just slowing down in 8th notes. And like I've always struggled with doing it slower.
I think it's really hard to groove playing 8th notes also.
Yeah,
They're so tricky because it really has to be it's not the rhythm of the small group, it's the rhythm of the big group where the accents are and the spaces. And it's not like when, if we think about rhythms playing triplets and 16ths, and like to vary the rhythm in the line is to vary the duration of each note, not the construction of the line itself.
Yeah, and you can play so fast that people
Yeah.
won't hear your imperfections in between, Like
Yeah.
you play really fast and just skip over an articulate.
Never happened before.
Yeah. Man, that's my whole style.
Both, I just want to interject because listening to both Paul and Caleb has made my brain scream the name Chris Speed. And I don't know, Nick, I don't know what kids or students are listening to, but I would really recommend checking out any of Chris Speed's more recent trio records with Dave King and who's playing bass on those? Chris
Tordini.
Tordini. They play a lot of tunes, and with Speed, you can really hear him every single note. You hear the intention behind it. You hear the breath and the thought, and even a little bit of uncertainty sometimes. And even when he's just playing a very stock lick, you feel like it's the reason it's coming out of his horn is because each note was intended, and not because he was just going through some series of mathematical functions that he knows will work for him. And so just hearing you guys made me think of him. And it also makes me think of Andrew D'Angelo, who, he'll often play, this is kind of random, but I'm thinking of one fortuitous day that I saw Guillermo Klein's band at the Vanguard, and the saxophone section was insane. It was like Mark Turner, Miguel Zenon, Chris Cheek, and Bill McHenry, and they did a song. It was like some complex changes, and all 4 saxophone players played a solo, and
except for the Barry player.
Yeah, I don't even think there was a Barry player. It might have been Chris Cheek playing Barry, but Bill McHenry was the last person to play. And after those 3 guys, it was like, what could he possibly do that would contribute?
Bill's tone and phrase.
Yeah. Oh man.
And so he played one note so insistently and with the most interesting rhythms and articulations, and it was just one note over and over and over again for the whole solo. And all 3 of those other saxophone players were like, I remember watching their faces and seeing Miguel Zenon just be like in disbelief that he was able to do that with just one note. So.
Bill is super bad. Him and Chris Speed share something fundamental. It's not their sound or approach really, but it's like, maybe it's like a Lester Young connection, or like a thing based in melody first, right? I mean, when Paul was saying, and I don't want to talk too much, but when Paul was saying about labeling like the approach tone up to the 1, and then you go up the arpeggio to the 9 or whatever, I think it was making me think about how it's so easy to think that that's the answer to what it is. The description, the label. And the label of what it is doesn't tell you anything about it other than its name. Something like that. And so, it's like that calling it the 9 has nothing to do with how the 9 sounds.
Yeah.
It's just the label for it. And so it's just really, I would implore, there's a lot of information there, but it doesn't tell you anything about the thing.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Andy,
'cause
did you have anything? I
yeah.
was gonna say, do you want to weigh in there?
Well, it's some very interesting topics. I just wanted to say a couple of things about um, language and about subjectivity, and then also about Chris Cheek. I love Chris Cheek. I think that there's something very unique about the way he approaches rhythm, the way he utilizes triplets in a way that to me is very, very much communicates the essence of jazz, because to me that's a very African thing. The triplet feel, the big three, and somebody like Grant Green is someone like that too. Um, and I like that a lot, the triplet approach that he has in a lot of his stuff, and I think he uses triplets masterfully. But I mean, he's a very rhythmic player, and I think that's great. With regards to language, with what you're saying, Paul, I mean, I really feel like it's up to each individual and all of us as individuals to determine how much we need to be steeped in language before we can start crafting our own voice. Because, I think that there's a danger if you spend so much time in language, then if you wish to be someone who's more of an innovator, has more of a individual sound, you can end up sounding like a great stylist or someone that can emulate so many different cats, but you really don't necessarily have your own voice. And then if you don't spend, and that would be the criticism that you could find yourself being subject to by the community and by your peers and just by the music world at large. And then if you don't spend enough time and you're more of an innovator, or you're more of like, I'm going to do my own thing and I'm not going to transcribe cats, or I'm not going to learn bebop skills or whatever, then you run the risk of, it
would work.
Yeah, exactly. You run the risk of exactly. So, I mean, I think it's really up to the player. I mean, I've heard people criticize, I've heard saxophonists criticize Wayne Shorter publicly because they don't like the fact that in Yes or No, he takes a D9 sus chord and then he goes to a D major 9 chord. And to me, I think that's ridiculous. I think it's really, I mean, to me, jazz is about being an individual. It's about being unique. And one of the things about language and also just, the way that academia is just so, I mean, it's just blown up, and the whole approach to with bebop scales and everything like that. I mean, there's obviously the tremendous utility in bebop scales, and it's great getting cats to play inside. But I mean, I think ultimately it should be about however you want to get from F on a D minor 7 to A or B on a C major 7 chord is really up to you, and the way that you get there is who you are. So, I mean, but I'm always thinking about language and there's different approaches to get language in your playing. I mean, I guess transcribing, learning as many tunes as you can, but I really think ultimately it's up to the individual. And then just with regards to intention, I think that's subjective too. I mean, one person can say, oh, it sounds like the guy's just playing a whole bunch of BS or whatever. And another person can be like, oh, man, that solo was great. I could feel every note. Every note was so deliberate. There was so much intention. So it's just such a subjective thing. And that's how it should be, in my opinion.
Sure.
I mean, of course it's subjective.
Totally.
I mean, the whole thing is to develop an opinion about style or preference, about sound, about rhythm, about any of those things, and then to try to make those informed opinions. Uninformed opinions are pretty much meaningless. They're just nothing. But informed opinions, then you can look at your own practice and look at the music, evaluate the music you're making against your preferences.
Sure.
And the things that you're doing in the direction of, I'm not talking to you, Andy, I'm just speaking out in general. But that the way we spend our time, is it in the direction of the things that we like?
Right. I also, I always try to argue that, people often say like such and such has amazing technique. And I think if I were to try to define the word technique, it would simply mean being able to do what you want to express on your instrument. And so if you don't want to play blazingly fast, or you don't want to play straight ahead jazz, or you don't want to do this, or you don't want to do that, it's not, you don't have bad technique if you can't do those things, because they are meaningless to you and your art. So, I mean, but I also do try to keep in mind what Paul said about being able to work. I think as a teacher, you definitely have some sort of responsibility to your students to set them up for a situation where they can flourish or at least survive.
Absolutely.
And so, for me, it's taken to the extreme that I have two different alto saxophones, and I have one that I use for jobs, that is a Yamaha. It's really easy to play. It plays perfectly in tune. And then I have one that I use for my own personal expression, which I would never be caught dead with in a situation where I would need to blend with other saxophone players or play really quietly. It has limitations, but I enjoy those limitations, for my own personal expression. You just have to sort of have you have to be realistic about how you can make a living, and see if it's possible for you as an individual to separate that from your creative life. And for some people, it isn't possible, and I understand that. But for me, I do want to be able to work, and I do want my students to get work. So
Yeah, and just to add on to that, if I could, like, that's kind of the reason I'm sort of focusing on that at this moment, like the idea of working, is I play a lot of wedding gigs, and I do a lot of educating in the wintertime, and I just want to balance that out with more jazz gigs. And at the moment in New York City, it really seems like the people that just sort of work playing jazz play more gigs that require straight ahead language, which is cool, and I love it. And again, it's personal stylistic choice. And yeah, for me, I've just sort of felt like I definitely could be stronger at it, and I think it would be a tipping point that to build on could help me get more work. Because again, like the philosophical and all this stuff, like it's like, how do you want your life to be? What do you want to do? What do you want your day-to-day life to be like? Like if you're like 100% an artist, what does that mean? Like in reality, what does it mean? Are you cool with having a job, while you build your art career? Because being an artist is more like being an indie rock musician than it is sort of like this idealized thing that we view the jazz history to be, and then like, for instance, like with Wayne playing that chord shape on Yes or No, dude already had like a massive career and record label at that point. Do whatever he wanted. That doesn't matter. Like, I don't have Blue Note Records giving me rent and food every month, or like, and so it's sort of the reality of the time. And I would love to just play my music or play in, everybody's band here and make art all the time. But it's like, how do you want to live your life? So for me at the moment, that means I think, some friends have been really helping me out, and they're saying, dude, if you just learn some more language, like, I'm going to put you on these gigs. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to learn this language, and I'm just going to do that because I want to do that. I want my life to be a certain way. I want more jazz gigs. And for other people at the time in their life, it might be like, I really want to work on my unique personal voice because I really need to create art. And I definitely personally felt like that for a very long time, putting out albums on Outside In and Under My Own Thing. I wanted to get my statement out there. So, we just went deep, jazz language.
Just if I could, just to address Paul, what you were saying. So when I said that about Wayne, that was not directed at you at all.
No, I didn't think that at all. No, I was just like, it's an example of like the example of the conversation about like, what does it mean to play language? What does it mean to not play language? Like, and Wayne is one of our heroes, and there's a moment where it's like, I'm choosing to play this, and it's like, what does it mean?
Right.
Cool.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I'm saying. My thing is like, it's up, like, if Wayne wants to do that, then good for Wayne. That's my attitude with that. And if you want to take a more inside approach, then that's great.
Yeah, like each person to their own at the moment. That's good for them.
Sure. Cool.
Oh, I like this conversation.
Yeah, me too.
We're gonna do this thing for a long time, presumably.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah. And so your priorities can change.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to want to do the same thing that you wanted to do when you were 17 or when you were or when you're 25 or when you're 40. And it seems like most of the people we admire, they were definitely not like that. Their priorities changed.
Yeah.
And
That's what,
so that's, I mean, that's it to me.
that's what makes being a music fan so fun, is like getting to observe the choices that the artists you like make. And sometimes you don't like an era of their work, or sometimes you wish they would go down a path and they maybe only made one album that you love. um, and it makes it fun to observe how people change over time as a fan of music, you know. So
Yeah.
and
Yeah, there
But
was
then
that
as you
Miles
changed, also
documentary.
like,
Oh, sorry, Nick.
no, go ahead.
I watched the Miles documentary. I finally caught up and got hip on Netflix, that came out, and there's a lot of stuff that is talked about in school, and there was a lot of stuff that wasn't. But there was a choice that he made, like in the from '69 on through '70, where it was like all these rock musicians were starting to come out, and he was sitting on stages, and people couldn't play at all, and they had massive audiences. And he was like, "You mean that if I play like this many people will come and I can make this much money?" And the manager was like, "Yeah, man, you could do that." And he's like, "I bet I could do this music way better than these guys can. So my audiences should be huge." And he's like, "I could make this amount of money." When I was 17, I'd be like, "Man, screw that. You're not cool. You're not being hardcore enough to the core. Like you're not following the path or whatever." But now, like when I'm, reaching an age older than 17, I have like I'm still like hardcore about the stuff I want to do. I still want to, but at the same time, like, man, like things are expensive, and I wouldn't mind, not having to work every hour I'm awake to make a lot of this stuff happen. So,
I mean, this might sound idealistic, but I do think there's a conundrum there, which is that if you, well, this I'd like to hear everybody's opinions on, because I'm just guessing from watching people's careers, and I have a strong feeling that if you focus on doing what you want to do, you'll have a long period of essentially a loss leader in your career, where you're going to have to constantly invest in yourself, and a lot of people don't make it through that. But if you can make it through that phase, it does seem like you're setting yourself up for sort of limitless possibilities. And there's hundreds of artists that fit into that category. And if you allow yourself to get too discouraged to the point where your sole goal, or the thing that's motivating you, is financial, you might actually be setting yourself up for limitations down the line, because you don't have real artistry that people are attracted to. You're going to limit yourself to always being a working musician for the entirety of your career. And this is just I kind of think this is kind of just starting a conversation. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah. I mean, it's I might be at a slightly different spot with this idea than a lot of people. I'm fortunate that my side work pays enough and doesn't take up too much of my time that I can leave. I can not worry about making money playing music, and I still have time to practice and to feel like I'm a musician first. So I feel pretty fortunate in that regard. But also, I don't feel like I really bought into the social media internet economy for musicians going forward. So I am sort of just checked out of of trying to make money playing music. And for me personally, I don't know. I mean, I like when I do make money, and it's like, I'm not trying to lose a ton of money if I can help it because I don't have it to lose. But for me, the way has been to take the money out of music so that I can try to do what I want. And I don't know. I've never had that much fun playing music for money, but sometimes, occasionally, the things all line up and you get paid and have a great concert. you know. So, but I don't know. I mean, I don't have no streaming strategy. I have no social media strategy. I don't, you know, I don't expect anyone to buy my records. They're not, my record under my name is not on streaming services, and it's not on Bandcamp. So that's a longer conversation, but it's you could buy it on iTunes or CD Baby or from me basically, and that's not helping me sell records or make any money, but I'm not a part of that other thing, and um, that other thing that's like some people's entire career in life, and so I don't know, I don't really know. It leaves me like out of the loop in that way, and I really like talking to Paul about this stuff because we made different choices, but he reminds me of the strength of his choices and thinking about work and being like a musician to make your living. Anyway, just wanted to say that piece.
Does that cue me up? Am I next?
Yeah, if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like my first really big inspirational teacher was a guy that worked. And I saw that very clearly when I was like 18. His name was Scott Mullet in New Hampshire. And he was in New York in the 70s and 80s. And he played Woody Herman and played with all the guys there in the Vanguard band. And if he'd stayed in New York, he would have probably been in the Vanguard band still today. But he was a working musician, and I would go see him play his jazz gigs on like every other Tuesday, and I would be like blown away, like, when he'd play. And at that point, I was like, man, this guy, wow, unbelievable artist and musicianship, etc. And then as I've gotten closer to his age, when I met him, like I realized that he was just living his life. And he was a multifaceted dude that could do many, many things so he could enjoy his life. He was definitely about enjoying his life. And I've come to appreciate that because it always seems like this double-edged sword. It's like you're either an artist or you're a working musician. There's no middle ground, And I feel like in my head, I'm very much about the middle. Like, my name's Paul Jones. It's a very average name, but like, how do I make that interesting at the same time? Like we talk about Chris Cheek, he plays very, very simple things, but the way he plays them is at an artistic level, and it's very inside. It's, very basic, in a lot of ways, but it blows us all away. And I think it still just sort of, for me, gets back to the, like, how do you want your life to be sort of situation, At certain times, one thing is going to call out to another. When I was in my 20s, I wanted to make art. In my early 30s, I was like, I need to get my art out, and then life goes on. And that sentence, I think, is a very important sentence. Like, life goes on. Like, what happens in that time to you to inform your decisions? Like, I'm a type 1 diabetic. That's a whole other crazy thing, that I got in my late 20s. And the idea of living through life with that versus not having any sort of chronic illness or medical necessity while being a musician changes your viewpoint, no matter how hardcore you are, because if you don't take care of that sort of situation, you got bigger problems. And everybody has some sort of thing eventually that is really, really a dominating factor. And if I had my ideal way, I would just play artistic gigs all day long, and we'd all make millions of dollars. So, but I still think there'd be a lot to be learned from by playing and working, you know, like stage presence, talking to an audience, like how to keep the flow of a concert going, how to entertain an audience, you know, with your music. That is highly artistic and personal. So at the moment in my life, like I feel like I've put a few records out. They make me feel really good about what I've done. And I'm looking more on like a day-to-day basis. What do I do? What do I want to do? And like, I want to play more jazz gigs, whatever they are, you know, and because I got a lot of friends I like hanging out with, and I want to see them and I want to play music with them because they're all great in their own ways. And I want to see my friends on the wedding scene, and I want to see my friends on, you know, teaching scene. And like, I think it's a hole in my playing. So I think it's just a balance. Again, at your time in your life, what do you think you need? And it probably is always a daily evaluation.
Andy, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to unpack here. I mean, I just kind of wanted to get back to what Brian originally brought up. You know, I mean, my father was a professional musician, and you know, he always taught me that professional means that you get paid. So I've always gone into this from the standpoint of being a professional, and I think that, you know, I mean, obviously, you can learn a tremendous amount of skill sets from being a professional musician, especially if you're open to working with, you know, crazy neurotic artists and shows. And, you know, I do the wedding stuff too, and all of that. And then I've always, you know, kind of thought of doing my own music, and the whole artist thing is sort of a separate thing. And I, you know, I think that that's definitely, there's a lot of utility to that. But the reality of it is, to your point, Brian, is, I mean, it's harder than it's ever been to make money as a professional musician, because when we're talking about monetizing the arts, it's incredibly hard to do. And when you want to talk about making something a business, there's the issue of supply and demand, and economics come into it. So New York, or anywhere for that matter, but especially New York, you know, in my opinion, and I've heard this from older cats in New York and then back home in Pittsburgh, everybody would be like, don't do music for a living, don't do it, you know, there are no gigs. And the amount of gigs that there were, say, in 1980 even, compared to now, it's like you're looking at like 90% less. And now the other thing you have is you have this relationship where the market, especially in New York, it's saturated with talent. Everybody comes here, right? The level's super high. The gigs are, the amount of gigs and the percentage of that is super low. So you have this completely out of whack supply demand ratio. So as a business model, I mean, it's been annihilated for a long time. And to be honest, it's, you know, students that I have and younger people that ask me, should I pursue it as a career? I tell them, no, absolutely not. You'd have to be nuts to do it. Having said that, I mean, I'm trying my best to do it. We're all trying our best to do it. But the reality of it is we're really trying to make a living in a business that is really, I mean, it's just annihilated. So what I would say is, I think what I try to do is, I mean, I'm grateful for any paying gig that I have. I'm grateful to make any money playing my music. I mean, I struggle and I strive to monetize my playing and my compositions as best that I can. And there is ways to do that. I think that music licensing is a really great way to monetize your music and your works. And especially non-exclusively, you can do it over and over and over again. So that's a really great thing. Touring is really good, especially if you're in a touring show. The wedding band thing, I mean, that's been very lucrative for me. The Broadway thing is lucrative. My own gigs, a lot of times I take a loss on my own stuff. So I think we should all, I think it's important to know what you want to do. And I think it's great. We're all artists. We're all professional musicians. But I just think that the reality of it is as a business, it's becoming increasingly more unsustainable. That doesn't mean that I'm saying that I'm going to stop doing it. But I think more than ever now, you're seeing people that do multiple different jobs, and it's not what it used to be. And I've been told that for years by all kinds of cats. But having said that, I mean, I'm grateful to do it. I'm grateful, like the most money that I've ever made on a gig was playing music. So I'm grateful for that. But it's just not what it used to be. I mean, there's not that many opportunities. The market is very saturated. So when you have so much supply and little demand, that is what it is. It's just an inefficient, ineffective business model. That's just how I see it, you know. So
totally. I want to say
which I'm
quickly
sure we all know, but
quickly that it's if there's for people who are watching this, or maybe there's some students. Nick said some students were watching earlier. That everybody has their own version. Your
absolutely.
version is not
I like that a lot. I like
not
that.
someone else's version. Someone you admire who you think I would like to do what they do.
Yep.
You basically are not gonna have you're not gonna have their life because everyone's creating we're putting together our lives piece by piece, and making it work the way we can do it for ourselves so we can be happy, try to be happy and try to make music. And so there's a lot of, but that said, there are also like an infinite number of possibilities of ways to do it. You got to find your way. It's the only, you're not going to get someone else's.
I just wanted to follow up to Brian's initial point because Andy reminded me of it. Was like the idea of like being extreme to just sticking to your art 100%. That's what you're saying, Brian. And like you won't make any money for a long time, and then once the door opens, you go through it, and it's huge. That's what your original point was.
Well, essentially, and actually, that's not what I choose to do with my own career, but I've observed people who I admire sort of take that tack, and I see it pay dividends. It just seems to take patience through hard years, and essentially a vow of, being poor.
I wonder if for those people that you think it's paid so many dividends, financial or otherwise, whether they feel that's true or not.
Right, that's the question.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to create an invisible boundary where you think, once I can get through that boundary, but then it'll always move, and then once you're through it, you discover that it's the same as on the other side.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I think like some of the, even like the unless you're huge, it's like the 1% thing again. It's just like 1%, even in jazz, are the ones making money. And if you're not in the 1%, you could be touring, but you might make just as much as like you would if you just stayed home, like working an hourly job. Oh man, you're a huge deal. But if you're not in that 1%, like I don't think they're making much, like very good money. And the perception versus reality thing is really crazy in the jazz world.
Yeah. I loved what Andy said also about I agree completely that some of the sort of best musical experiences I've gotten to have been with older working musicians who none of our students would have ever heard of. Many people who maybe have never even really been on records other than as a cast recording in a show, or like a studio musician on a pop record. So they're not names. They're just guys who have an incredible skill for being able to play exactly what's needed for the situation that they're in. The only thing that worries me personally at this stage of my career, as I meet more people and work more in for example, in my life, I work in the theater a lot, is you do meet a lot of really dark people who have totally lost their creative spark. And so while they are incredible musicians, it seems that they're very unhappy in their lives. And I would personally much rather be happy and healthy and feel good about my life decisions than be financially successful in that way or something. So but I guess as I'm hearing myself talk, I guess I'm just trying to say that this is a huge concern to me all the time. Like I'm always reevaluating the decisions that I've made and am making to make sure that I don't lose my creative spark, but that I support myself. And like Caleb said, it looks different for everybody. I think that I don't want this to come across as discouraging to anybody who might be watching. I think a positive thing to say is that we're 5 people who are all doing that successfully. So
Successfully.
So yes, whatever that might mean. So.
Doing it nonetheless.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I think Brian. I think I agree with your original point, and everybody really. But just that's kind of the approach I've always viewed it as, like, you have two musical selves, or at least I do. That one is the one that is the artistic one, and one is the one that's like the craftsman, and the craftsmanship helps the artistry, and the artistry helps the craftsmanship. And so for me, that's what I try to talk to my students about the necessity to, like Paul says, like play what needs to be played, and then also to go and make a statement that's interesting to people. Like, you can't not do both. At least I feel like you can't not do both if you want to be a quote unquote jazz musician in this age. But wow, this has been like so interesting. I don't want to take advantage of everybody's time, but I would love to go around one more time and let people kind of plug what they're working on, whatever projects they're working on, or want people to go listen to, and maybe a place where they can find your music. Some people have already mentioned their websites or different things, but I'd love to give everybody a chance to just plug somewhere to go to find their music and what you'd like people to find of yours. So Andy, do you want to start off?
Yeah, sure. Once again, thank you so much, Nick, for doing this. Paul, Brian, Caleb, it's great hearing just such an amazing wealth of information and great dialoguing with you. And I wish you all well. Hope to meet you all in person when this whole crazy pandemic is over, hopefully sooner than later. And I'd just like to plug my record, which is called NYC Stories, featuring Wayne Escoffrey, George Burton, Paul Wells, Alan Mednard, Nathan Peck, Glenn White, and Wayne Smith Jr., which is out now on Next Level Records. And that's available on all digital platforms, and you can also buy it from me directly. That's my main focus right now. Also check out my good friend and piano extraordinary George Burton's new record called Reciprocity, which I'm on, and I'm very proud to be part of that record. That's a great cast of players, such as Tim Warfield, and Marshall Allen is doing some interview snippets in between the tracks. So definitely check that out, and I will let everyone know when hopefully my shows get rescheduled. So thank you all.
Great. Excellent. Caleb?
Yeah, so the first thing, I don't know, maybe this isn't in ranked order, but my name is Caleb Curtis. I'm a saxophone player, and we're saying goodbye. And the first thing that I would say is the Curtis Garabedian Speraza trio record called New Year, which came out last year, and we were supposed to go in to record a new one on Wednesday, but we didn't do it. And then, so there's another one coming, and I have a record coming out in the fall on Imani Records with Josh Lawrence, Chet Doxas, Mark Whitfield Jr., Luquez Curtis, Julius Rodriguez, and Sarah Elizabeth Charles.
Lemon.
So that's called Ain't No Storm, which at the time was because I thought things were not usually as bad as they seemed, but not so sure about that name.
How things will change.
Yeah, but I think I'm just going to have to keep going with it. So, the Orrin Evans and the Captain Black Big Band has a new record out May 1st on Smoke Sessions.
Nice.
Which I'm looking forward to everyone hearing. There's a lot of people on it. So thank you very much for having me, and always nice to see you guys.
Ryan?
Okay, so I really want to plug our colleague Seth Weaver's big band record, which came out today on Outside in Music, which I produced that, and I think it's really good. I'm super proud of Seth, and I know that he's put 100% of every facet of his life into it. So I really hope people will go listen to that. And as for myself, I would, I have a live album coming out on Out of Your Head Records this fall. We haven't picked a date yet, but it's going to be called Viscera, live at Firehouse 12. And it features my little band, which is me, Ollie Hervonen on guitar, Marty Kenny on bass, and Stephen Kramer on drum set. And that's all new music, and it's a live record. And it's also, it was the 16th show of a 3-week tour
great.
that we did last
Yeah.
year. So the energy is wild. And do I have anything else to plug? And I guess I'll plug Let's Get Tropical
There we
by Paul
Yeah.
Jones. You got it, Paul.
Yeah, I got
Passing
an
the
album
baton.
Yeah.
called Let's Get Tropical. There's one bossa nova on the album called Let's Get Tropical, inspired by exotica music and lounge music in hotels, and the rest of the album is heavy-hitting, mental, deep jazz. So it's a little bit of a trick, but I like it. And it has Clarence Penn, Linda O, and Phil Markowitz on it, which was just amazing. I'm so thankful for them. And Danica Peniston did the photography, and Adrian Paderis did the graphic design. And I think the album art came out pretty amazing, which I was very happy about. You can find my music on my website, paulthejones.com. And I created a digital booklet because I was tired of not getting any information about albums, and I missed the experience of getting album art. So I made a page specifically designed to be album art in the digital world, and it has the album. You can play the whole thing for free. The album art, pictures from the session, the videos that I'm making, exclusive liner notes for that page written by guitarist and friend Noah Berman. And then that's paulthejones.com. And then what I'm working on in the future at the moment is I'm working on developing my jazz language as a method to get more work, but also take my artistry to the next level in a way to communicate with people out there in a better way.
Nice.
Yeah, Paul.
Man. Well, thank you all so much. Make sure you guys, if you're listening, check out all of these great projects. There's so much music to listen to while you're stuck at home. So
Yeah.
Thanks,
you all,
everybody.
and
Thank you.
see you later.
Thanks, everybody.
And
Thank
we'll
you,
catch
Nick.
you next time.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
All right. Talk to you
Take
later.
care.